For years, royal power struggles have played out behind closed doors, but few developments have shocked insiders more than reports that Prince William has taken control of the Queen's private estate. What should have been a quiet family matter has instead sparked outrage, with sources claiming Camilla's relatives were left furious and feeling deeply betrayed. As tensions reportedly escalated and loyalties were tested, many began asking the same unsettling question. What really happened, and why did this unexpected move ignite such bitter divisions within the royal circle? And how do you think Camilla's family got hold of the private estate? Would William's control be reversed later? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. To help us create more videos and uncover the latest royal drama, please subscribe. The inheritance that changed everything. For years, royal watchers had become used to seeing the British monarchy project an image of perfect harmony. Public appearances, grand ceremonies, and carefully planned smiles created the impression that everything behind palace walls was calm and united. Yet beneath that polished picture, quiet tensions had been building for some time. Even so, very few imagined that a single private inheritance would spark so much curiosity, speculation, and whispered concern. Following the death of Queen Elizabeth II, Prince William assumed ownership of one of the late monarch's most valued and closely guarded private estates. To the outside world, the transfer seemed routine. After all, royal history has always been built on succession. Estates are inherited, titles pass from one generation to the next, and ancient traditions continue without attracting much controversy. But according to reports from palace insiders, this particular transition carried far greater significance than many people realized. Sources close to royal circles suggested that Queen Camilla was not included in any discussions before the decision was completed. There were reportedly no private meetings, no gradual efforts to prepare her, and no attempts to explain the deeper implications of the transfer. By the time those around her became aware of what had happened, every detail had already been settled. That one detail, insiders claimed, dramatically altered the mood within royal circles, because this estate represented far more than acres of land or valuable property. It stood as a symbol of trust, legacy, and influence. Throughout her 70-year reign, Queen Elizabeth had protected this private possession with extraordinary care. To many observers within the palace, William's inheritance appeared to carry a deeper meaning. It was not seen as a simple legal process, but rather as a quiet statement about continuity, authority, and the future direction of the monarchy. Some even wondered whether the message had been intentionally delivered without a single word being spoken. What made the situation even more fascinating was Prince William's response, or rather, his lack of one. There were no television interviews, no public explanations, no attempts to reassure anyone, not even a carefully worded statement. Nothing. And those who understand royal politics know that silence inside the monarchy can be far more powerful than any speech. In a world where every gesture is studied and every sentence is measured, saying nothing at all sometimes creates the loudest message of all, leaving both supporters and critics wondering what, exactly, lies beneath the surface. Who was most affected by William's control? How did they react? Let's delve into the details of the sudden panic felt by Camilla's family behind closed doors. The slow fade of influence. As news of the transfer began to circulate quietly within royal circles, a wave of unease reportedly started to grow among members of Queen Camilla's extended family. It was not the kind of panic that comes from public scandals or loud disagreements. Instead, it was something more subtle and harder to explain. These were not distant relatives who only met once in a while or exchanged polite greetings during holidays. Many of them had, over the years, built steady and close connections within the royal environment surrounding King Charles and Camilla. Through time, their closeness to the couple had opened doors that would otherwise have remained closed. It had created opportunities, relationships, and access to influential spaces. Slowly, this royal proximity had become part of their identity and even their daily lives. But then, almost without warning, things began to feel different. There was no official announcement removing anyone. There were no public arguments or visible signs of breakdown. On the surface, everything still looked controlled and orderly. Yet underneath, something had shifted. The problem was not action, it was confusion. No one seemed to clearly understand what the new expectations were, or how the new structure would work. And in such environments, uncertainty is often more disturbing than open disagreement. When rules are clear, people can adjust. But when they are unclear, every interaction begins to feel uncertain and risky. According to palace observers, even small changes became noticeable almost immediately. Meetings that once felt relaxed and familiar started to feel tense and careful. Conversations that used to flow easily became shorter, more formal, and more controlled. People who were once comfortable speaking freely now paused more often, choosing their words with greater care, as if afraid of saying the wrong thing. At the same time, Queen Camilla herself was said to have stepped back slightly from the visible side of palace activities, staying more behind the scenes within palace walls. This only added to the quiet tension building around her circle. Those closest to her reportedly searched for clarity and reassurance, trying to understand what direction things were moving toward. But what unsettled them most was not the idea of a dramatic clash or a sudden break. Instead, it was something far less visible and far more difficult to confront. It was the slow fading of influence, not through one bold decision or a single public announcement, but through many small and almost invisible shifts. A meeting that no longer included certain names, an invitation that did not arrive, a discussion that now required extra approval, a relationship that, little by little, no longer carried the same importance it once did. Because in royal life, influence rarely disappears in a single moment. It does not usually end with confrontation or noise. More often, it weakens quietly, step by step, almost without notice. And by the time people finally recognize what has changed, they often realize that the entire landscape around them has already been quietly reshaped. Why would Camilla's family feel entitled to royal inheritance? Do they occupy any position in the royal family? Could they silently be exploiting their position in the royal family for personal gains? Let's find out why Camilla's family occupy a unique place in royal life. The quiet role of Camilla's children. Queen Camilla's two children, Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopes, occupy a unique and carefully balanced place within the wider royal family. Their position is unusual because, unlike the children of King Charles, they are not working royals. They do not hold royal titles. They do not carry out official royal duties, and they have never stepped into formal roles within the monarchy. Instead, they have chosen to build independent lives, careers, and families, while still maintaining a close and loving relationship with their mother. Tom Parker Bowles is widely known as a food writer, critic, and television personality. He has built a strong reputation in the culinary world through his books, reviews, and media appearances. Laura Lopes, on the other hand, works in the art world as a curator and is known for keeping a much quieter and more private lifestyle. Both siblings have generally stayed away from constant media attention, preferring to live normal professional and family lives rather than being pulled into royal publicity. Despite the intense public attention and controversy that surrounded their mother for many years, both Tom and Laura have consistently shown loyalty to her. During the period when Camilla's relationship with King Charles was heavily criticized and widely debated in the media, the children stood by her. They have often described her as a caring and devoted mother who remained steady and supportive throughout their upbringing, even during difficult public moments. Their connection to the royal family became more visible after Camilla's marriage to King Charles in 2005. They took part in the wedding and have, from time to time, appeared at important royal occasions. However, they have never become part of the official working structure of the monarchy. As noted by Vanity Fair, they occupy a peculiar but significant position, close enough to be considered family, yet independent enough to live outside royal obligations. In simple terms, they are stepchildren to the king, while still maintaining their personal identities and private lives. Another important element in Camilla's adjustment to royal life has been the stabilizing influence of her own children. According to royal observers, Tom and Laura help keep her grounded. Unlike courtiers, advisors, or public figures who often surround royal life, her children treat her simply as mum. They see her as a mother, grandmother, and family member first, not just as queen. This normal family connection has helped her maintain emotional balance and a sense of everyday life, even within the highly formal world of the palace. Today, Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopes remain respected and welcomed members of the wider royal circle. Their role is not defined by duty or constitutional responsibility, but by family bonds, loyalty, and personal respect. This makes their situation rare in a modern monarchy where family ties and public duty are usually tightly blended, but in their case, remain clearly separate. Could William's action be deliberately aimed at kicking off Camilla's family? Could it be a sincere move to clean up the monarchy? Let's dive into the details of William's silent revolution in reshaping the monarchy. William's silent institutional revolution. Perhaps the most striking part of the whole situation was not what Prince William said or did publicly, but what he did not do. At no point did he appear hostile or confrontational. There were no dramatic arguments in front of cameras, no emotional speeches to the nation, and no open accusations directed at anyone within or around the royal household. The public saw no signs of a royal battle unfolding, yet behind the scenes, something far more powerful was taking place. People close to the situation described it as a quiet but steady transformation, a silent revolution that did not rely on noise or public drama, but on careful step-by-step changes that slowly reshaped how things worked. The estate did not change overnight. Instead, it shifted in small but meaningful ways that only became clear over time. Access to important spaces and decision-making became more controlled. Processes that were once informal and flexible were now reviewed more carefully. Long-standing arrangements, some of which had existed comfortably for years, suddenly came under closer examination. Even familiar privileges that people had grown used to were no longer automatic. They were now expected to follow clearer, more formal procedures. This change mattered because it touched the heart of how royal influence had traditionally worked. For generations, much of that influence had been built on personal relationships. It was often about who knew whom, who had earned trust over time, and who had quietly gained access through loyalty and familiarity rather than official systems. But according to those observing the shift, William and his advisors were aiming for a different model. They appeared to be building a slimmer, more structured monarchy, one that relied less on personal connections and more on clear rules, defined roles, and formal accountability. To his supporters, this approach looked like a necessary modernization. They believed the institution needed to be protected from hidden weaknesses, outdated habits, and informal power structures that were difficult to monitor or control. In their eyes, these changes were not harsh but responsible. However, critics interpreted the same developments in a very different way. To them, the new system felt colder and less personal. They saw longtime contributors being pushed aside, not through open rejection, but through quiet restructuring. People who had once been close to the inner workings of the royal world reportedly found themselves slowly removed from influence, sometimes without dramatic confrontation, but with firm administrative change. What made it even more notable was William's demeanor throughout it all. He remained composed, steady, and measured. He did not react publicly to criticism or speculation. Instead, he maintained a calm presence, letting the changes speak for themselves. In many ways, it reflected a leadership style shaped by the lesson often associated with the grandmother who raised him. that real power does not always need to announce itself loudly. Sometimes it is most effective when it moves quietly, steadily, and without drawing attention to its hand. Could William's move have been inspired by something he learned from Queen Elizabeth? Did he share any close bond with her? Let's dig into the details of Prince William's revelation on how his bond with his grandparents evolved from formality to warmth. William's reflection on loving grandparents. Prince William once gave a rare and very personal insight into what it was like growing up with his grandparents, Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip. He opened up about their relationship during his appearance on The Reluctant Traveler with Eugene Levy, offering a softer, more human picture of life inside the royal family than the public usually sees. William explained that, in his younger years, life around his grandparents was shaped strongly by tradition, duty, and formality. As a result, even family relationships carried a certain distance. Conversations and visits were respectful and proper, but not always relaxed or openly affectionate. He noted that this was not unusual for people of their generation, especially for the Queen and Prince Philip, who grew up in a time when emotional expression was often kept private and restrained. Despite that formal atmosphere, William made it clear that the bond was still strong. He described having a good and stable relationship with both grandparents, even if it was expressed in a quieter way. Over time, however, something changed in a noticeable and beautiful way. As Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip entered their later years, particularly into their 80s, they began to relax a little bit, as William put it. With age, responsibilities felt lighter, routines became less rigid, and their interactions with family grew warmer and more open. This shift allowed William to experience a very different side of them. Visits became more joyful, filled with laughter, shared stories, and a greater sense of ease. The distance that once existed between monarch and grandson slowly gave way to something more natural and affectionate. William recalled these later years with deep appreciation, describing them as some of the happiest family moments he experienced with them. His reflections also reveal something deeper about the royal family as a whole. Behind the public image of duty and ceremony, there were real personal relationships that evolved, just like any other family. William's memories show that even the most formal traditions can soften with age, experience, and trust. He also spoke honestly about his own journey as a future king. As a young prince, the weight of expectation sometimes felt heavy and uncertain. But with maturity, he has grown more confident and grounded in his role. Today, he says he feels more prepared for what lies ahead and more at peace with the responsibilities that will eventually come. Through his reflections, William did not just speak about kings and consorts, but about grandparents who became more open, more relaxed, and more emotionally present in their later years, leaving behind memories filled with warmth, laughter, and love. Could William have taken control of the estate out of revenge for Diana? Could Diana's shadow be lurking somewhere in the palace? Let's look into the details of old wounds that could have influenced new battles. When duty collides with memory. But this story was never only about land, titles, or who gets access to what inside royal walls. Those are just the surface details people see. Underneath it all, something much older and heavier was at work. History. A long chain of events, emotions, and memories that cannot simply be washed away or rewritten by time. Prince William grew up right in the middle of one of the most painful and public royal breakdowns in modern history. He did not just hear about it in reports, he lived through it as a child. He saw his parents' marriage slowly fall apart under intense public attention. He watched his mother, Princess Diana, struggle with emotional pain, while the world watched and judged from a distance. He also saw how Camilla became one of the most talked about and debated figures in Britain, surrounded by criticism, blame, and controversy for many years. All of these experiences left deep marks on him. Childhood memories do not disappear easily, especially ones filled with tension and sadness. They often shape how a person thinks, even in adulthood. This is why some observers quietly believed that William's actions might not be purely institutional. They suggested that personal feelings could still be present underneath his careful official behavior. On the other hand, many strongly disagreed with this idea, saying William has always shown strict discipline and a strong ability to separate private emotions from his royal responsibilities. In truth, both interpretations may hold some level of reality, depending on how one views him. At the same time, King Charles found himself in an extremely difficult emotional position. On one side was his wife, Queen Camilla, who had finally gained acceptance after years of public struggle. On the other side was his eldest son, Prince William, the future of the monarchy itself. Any open attempt to step in risked pulling the family into fresh conflict, something the institution could not afford. But staying silent came with its own cost, as it left Camilla's supporters feeling frustrated and unprotected. There were quiet hopes in some circles that Charles might intervene privately, speak to William, and ease the tension behind closed doors. Yet those hopes seemed to fade with time. According to Palace Whispers, William showed no interest in changing his stance or adjusting his approach, and Charles, aware of the bigger picture, appeared to understand a painful truth. Challenging the future king directly could create consequences far greater than simply allowing events to unfold. It was a deeply uncomfortable balancing act with no clear solution. For Charles, it may have been one of the most emotionally isolating challenges of his reign, caught between duty to his wife and loyalty to the son who would one day inherit everything. Could Camilla have inherited the private estate from Queen Elizabeth herself? Were the queens cordial at all? Let's find out. From suspicion to royal acceptance. According to royal biographer Christopher Anderson, the relationship between Queen Elizabeth II and Camilla Parker Bowles changed slowly over many years, moving from suspicion and distance to eventual acceptance and quiet support in the final chapter of the Queen's life. Anderson explained that in the early years, the Queen was deeply uneasy about Camilla's place in Prince Charles's life. After the breakdown of Charles and Princess Diana's marriage and the public crisis that followed, tensions within the royal family increased, and Camilla became a highly sensitive figure within palace circles. Anderson claims that both Queen Elizabeth II and the Queen Mother initially held Camilla responsible, at least in part, for the damage and instability that the monarchy faced during the difficult 1990s. At that time, the royal family was under intense public criticism, and every personal decision seemed to carry national consequences. This made Camilla an even more controversial and complicated presence in the story of the monarchy. Following Princess Diana's tragic death in 1997, public anger toward Camilla grew even stronger. Many people saw her as the other woman in a painful love triangle that had played out in the media. She faced years of criticism, rejection, and distrust from the public, making her one of the most unpopular figures in Britain for a long period. Despite this, Prince Charles remained deeply committed to Camilla. Over time, he worked carefully and patiently to change public opinion and slowly rebuild her image. Anderson suggests that Charles spent many years trying to convince his mother to accept Camilla fully. It reportedly took around 8 years before Queen Elizabeth finally agreed to his wish to marry her. Even then, the Queen did not attend the civil wedding ceremony in 2005, although she did attend the later blessing service, showing both caution and partial acceptance. Anderson explained that Charles continued for nearly 2 decades to encourage his mother to see Camilla in a different light. He believed she was loyal, steady, and devoted to him, even when public opinion was strongly against her. While the Queen understood the sensitivity of public feeling and the need to protect the monarchy's reputation, she gradually softened her stance as she observed Camilla's quiet consistency and dedication. This long process of change reached its most important moment in February 2022, when Queen Elizabeth II publicly stated her sincere wish that Camilla should be known as Queen Consort when Charles became king. This statement marked a powerful turning point, showing that years of hesitation had finally given way to acceptance, trust, and a settled blessing for Camilla's future role in the monarchy. Queen Elizabeth finally agreed to his wish to marry her. Even then, the Queen did not attend the civil wedding ceremony in 2005, although she did attend the later blessing service, showing both caution and partial acceptance. Anderson said Charles continued for nearly 2 decades to encourage his mother to see Camilla in a different light. He believed she was loyal, steady, and devoted to him, even when public opinion was strongly against her. While the Queen understood the sensitivity of public feeling and the need to protect the monarchy's reputation, she gradually softened her stance as she observed Camilla's quiet consistency and dedication. This long process of change reached its most important moment in February 2022, when Queen Elizabeth II publicly stated her sincere wish that Camilla should be known as Queen Consort when Charles became king. This statement marked a powerful turning point, showing that years of hesitation had finally given way to acceptance, trust, and a settled blessing for Camilla's future role in the monarchy. What implication does William's move have on the monarchy? Do things seem likely to return to the usual? Let's talk about the new center of power that seems to shake the entire monarchy. Quiet rise of royal power. As weeks slowly stretched into months, the atmosphere inside the palace reportedly shifted from worry to a quiet kind of acceptance. The early tension and uncertainty that once surrounded the situation began to fade. For many in Queen Camilla's close circle, it became increasingly clear that the old order they were used to was not likely to return. The belief that things would go back to normal weakened with time. The idea that Prince William would eventually soften his approach began to disappear. At the same time, hopes that King Charles III might step in more strongly to reshape the balance also started to fade. Instead, a new reality quietly took hold within the royal household, one that many inside the palace could feel, even if it was never openly spoken. At the center of this shift stood a clear and steady presence: Prince William. What made the change so striking was not loud confrontation or public disagreement. There were no emotional speeches, no public arguments, and no open criticism directed at Queen Camilla or her close allies. Instead, he simply continued moving forward with calm focus and consistency, letting time and action do the work. From a strategic point of view, this approach appeared highly controlled and disciplined. Nothing dramatic was seen on the surface, yet the structure around the monarchy slowly began to adjust. From a human point of view, however, reactions were mixed. Supporters viewed him as a future king, carefully protecting the stability and future of the institution he is expected to lead. Critics, on the other hand, felt that his quiet distance and silence could sometimes feel firm, even emotionally distant. Over time, one important lesson became clearer inside the royal environment. Real power does not always show itself through open conflict. It often works through quieter channels, through trust, access, influence, and private relationships. Small shifts matter: who is included in discussions, who is invited into important spaces, and who slowly finds themselves less present in key moments. The estate of Queen Elizabeth II, in this sense, became more than just property or tradition. It came to represent a period of transition and changing authority within the monarchy itself. Today, public events still show unity, smiles, and tradition. Ceremonies continue as expected. But behind the formal appearances, many believe that relationships have subtly changed, loyalties have shifted, and a new center of influence has formed. And as this quiet transition continues to unfold, one message becomes increasingly clear. The era of Prince William is not just coming. It has already begun, shaping the future of the monarchy in ways that will likely be felt for years to come. So, what do you think about Prince William's purchase of the private estate? Do you really think it could be a payback for Diana? We'd love to hear your opinions in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe.